Happy Sabbath. We are so glad that you are joining us for worship this morning. Stu is not here today. He has bailed on me for the Holy Land tour with our church and Pastor Randy, so he will be back in a few weeks. But let's get started on a few things that are happening here at the church. Tonight we have a very special concert that is happening. It's United for the Ukraine. I know many of you have been seeing on the news all that is going on in the Ukraine. We want to do something to help the families over there, help support them. So tonight at 4 o'clock in the sanctuary, our music department, along with our U-Reach ministry and also Loma Academy, are joining forces for a beautiful music program. We invite you to come out and support them, but specifically to support the families of the Ukraine. And next weekend on March the 26th at 6 o'clock in the sanctuary, we have the Melashenko family coming to enrich us with music. They have been singing for over 5 decades. They've been on Voice of Prophecy and the Quiet Hour ministry. Many of you know this family. They're also personal friends of ours. So come and join us for the Melashenko family concert, March the 26th at 6 o'clock. And then on the 27th, it's the 4th weekend of the month, and that means that our quilters are at it again. If you would like to come and participate in making quilts for infants in the ICU at the hospital, you can do that. They'll meet Sunday from 9 to 12 in room 105. If you're not able to do that but would like to support them, they are taking donations, either money or if you have material and fabric that you would like to give them, they would really appreciate that. If you'd like to sign up, we have more information on our website about that. And then starting in April, we have our Rules of Engagement seminar. This is a seminar for people that are dating seriously, or maybe for individuals that are newly engaged. If you would like to have some helpful tools in your relationship, we invite you to sign up. You will need to pre-register. The seminar begins on April the 1st, and it goes every Friday night except April 15th of that month. So register online for that. And then our Praxis ministry has their annual retreat. It will be the first weekend of April, but guess what? You only have 2 days until registration closes. So March the 21st, registration will close. We hope that if you are a young adult, you will sign up. It's a wonderful time with other young adults and Pastor Philip. So if you want to be a part of that, register by the 21st. Anyway, that's it for announcements. If you want any more information, go to our website. And we just want you to have a terrific Sabbath. We love each and every one of you.
morning. Good morning and happy Sabbath. I would like you to warm up your space a little bit by turning to perhaps somebody you didn't drive with and welcome them to Sabbath, welcome them to church, maybe with whatever you feel comfortable with, a smile, a shake, a handshake, a hug. And as you do that, I would like to welcome our online community. I know that many people who cannot come to our local church attend online, not only locally here, but across the globe. So welcome. Also, I'd like to remind you that our sermon series is called Gifted, and we really encourage you to go on to our website, LLUC.org, and take the spiritual gifts assessment there. Now, one thing is that we're looking to, of course, involve you here locally so that you can serve, especially according to your gifts. But also, let's remember, as disciples, we serve and we share our spiritual gifts no matter where we are. So work, home, family. So go online and take our spiritual gifts assessment. Also, I just want to remind you that we have our concert this evening, our benefit concert for Ukraine. And that's at 4 p.m. here in the sanctuary, but I also want to let you know that it will be broadcasted. So for those of you who are virtual or cannot make it today here in the sanctuary, please join us online. Also, you can donate at any time. It's on the front page of LLUC.org. So as you open your hearts, as you open your minds to the Holy Spirit today for worship, welcome. Please stand for the hymn of praise.
Church, I believe we've come to one of the most important parts in our church service. For you see, when we sing praises, when we sing songs, we're singing to God. When we read Holy Scripture, we're reading about God. When we hear the spoken word, we're studying about God. But when we pray, we're talking directly to God. So those of you who can, I'd like to invite you to kneel with me as we speak to the Creator of the universe. O God, which art in heaven, never will we tire of giving you thanks for sending Jesus Christ to this earth to die on the cross. And through the shedding of his blood, we can have forgiveness of our sins. Thank you so much. But dear Lord, this morning we gather here together as a church family. And no doubt, there are individuals who have come here today with hearts that are broken with grief over the loss of loved ones. No doubt there are individuals here present today who are having financial challenges, health challenges, different types of challenges, home relations that are being broken. Oh God, please bring peace. Please bring unity. Please, oh God, bring joy and happiness to those individuals. But then our mind, oh God, goes to our fellow believers there in the Ukraine who are suffering right now. Oh God, there are many things we do not understand. And many times we ask ourselves the question, does Jesus really care? But then we're mindful of the words of that beautiful song that says, oh yes, he cares. I know he cares. When his heart is touched with my grief, when the days are weary and the long nights dreary, I know my Savior cares. And oh God, even though there are things we don't understand this side of heaven, we have your wonderful promises that one day soon you will clarify and you will explain everything to us. And one thing we do have assurance that you have everything under control. In the meantime, oh God, help us to trust and have enough faith in you that everything will turn out all right. Now, oh God, during this church service, we would ask that you would once again bless Pastor Miguel as he brings us the spoken word. May we be in tune with your sweet spirit. And dear God, once we leave this place, return to our homes and to our communities, may those who see us, may they say, we see Jesus in you. Now bless us, O God, unto this end. And we long for that day when we can see Jesus Christ with the holy angels return once again to receive us into his own. May that day be soon. And, oh Lord, may we be found ready. We ask it all in the precious and loving and powerful name, that name that is above all other names, the name of Jesus. Amen. Amen.
Amen. Weren't they beautiful? Oh, thank you so much, team, for leading us in that. Well, friends, I want to share a story with you, not the children's story. You're going to get a 2-for-1 today. The children's story is coming. But I want to share a story with you about something that happened 3 years ago. We, as a young adult ministry, were wondering, God, what might be another element to what we have for our young adults here on this campus that might bless them? And one young adult looked at me and he said, I've always wanted to have a group of guys just kind of come around me and just speak into my life. And Pastor Phil, what if we did that? And I said, absolutely, I would love to do that. It's something that I did in my previous kind of seminary experience when I was back at Andrews. Led a group of young men together. We had a small group time. It was amazing. And so in this little group of ours, we had someone that was 91 years old, Dr. Brand Stater, you remember him, maybe here in this campus. He passed away sadly recently. But then also we had an 18-year-old and everyone in between. And in this group, we had men that had experienced the loss in their spouse, losses of job, divorce, hardship, trials. And they got to speak into the lives of all of us younger ones, maybe below them, and we got to speak into ones below us. And it was so beautiful. It was so meaningful. The group said, hey, we don't want to stop. We want this to go on. And you know what? We shouldn't just keep it to ourselves. Let's grow this to another group. And so the next season of 10 weeks, in our life group season, we had 3 groups, a guys group and 2 girls groups. And those groups said, this was so wonderful. Let's do this again, but not just with us. Let's spread this beyond. And so we had 4, and then 6, and then 7. And then last season, in this fall, we had 10. And this season, in the spring, we have 20 life groups happening. We have over 50 young adult leaders who are facilitating each of these groups. And with such growth that we didn't expect, God, what are you doing? This is amazing. It has also increased our need for training, for more leaders, and for more finances. Every one of these groups that we lead, it costs us thousands of dollars as we provide training and materials and food and supplies, books for each of them. And so, friends, I'm beseeching you, would you consider supporting our young adult ministry in a meaningful and active way? You can do that online if you're watching. You can do that in the pews if you're right here. And just mark on your tithe envelopes, Praxis Young Adults. But please don't think it's just me that I'm thinking about. I'm also thinking about our entire church this morning. And so if you would consider also our church budget, which provides for all the ministries of our church, would you think about our young adult facility that was created and every other facility added to it in our new building for media and UReach. I mean, this building is just bursting out of the seams. Every room is being used during the week. And so I want to thank you for your faithfulness in believing in the Loma University Church. It takes a community to dream bigger. And it takes the Holy Spirit's empowerment to do something that we all just say, God, this was only you. And so would you be part of that vision and mission? Thank you, friends, for your financial giving, for your prayers, and for being part of this church. God bless you.
Well, good morning. You can go ahead and sit down. This morning, I guess, this is part 2 after Philip, but I know children's feature is just as much for you as it is for everybody else. Well, kids, it's so nice to have the junior choir up here. I have missed having young faces sitting around and surrounding me up here. So very soon, I'm sure that the rest of you will be able to join us. Well, for the last couple weeks, we have been talking about the fruits of the Spirit: love, joy, peace. We had Chris come out in a big judge's robe last week talking about peace. And today, we're going to talk about patience. When I thought of patience, I thought, what fruit would represent patience the best? And the best thing I could think of was this right here, a pomegranate. Does it take you a long time to eat a pomegranate? It sure does. I sit there and I crack it open, and peg by peg, you have to have a lot of patience with a pomegranate. I know I asked you first service, so you probably remember the answer. How many pegs are in a big pomegranate? Over 1,000. You were listening first service. Yes, over 1,000. Isn't that a lot? So our fruit of the Spirit is a pomegranate today. Well, when we talk about patience, I have to admit that patience is probably the hardest fruit of the Spirit for me. I don't know about you. Do you like waiting? Sometimes we have to wait and have patience when we really don't want to. I'll share a little something with you. The thing I'm struggling with right now, having patience, is with my little puppy. I'm trying to train him, and I do the same thing over and over, and I don't always have a lot of patience to pour into him because I'm like, you need to get this already, right? So patience is one of those things that's really difficult because we deal with it every single day. Now, I'm sure you don't get impatient at all, do you? No. Okay, well, if you are younger out here, I see some of you. Do you get impatient when you're hungry and you want a snack to eat? You could nod. Mom, where's my snack? I have to eat. Sometimes that happens. Or maybe you're standing in line somewhere and you're like, this line is so long. I just want to go home. Does that happen? Now, for some of you here, you're much older. You can handle that. But maybe you deal with impatience in a different way. Like maybe your mom and dad are talking after third service, and you're like, I am hungry and I want to leave. Or maybe the sermon goes really long, Pastor Miguel, and you're like, when is this going to be over? What about when you're learning an instrument or a new sport? Road trip. It's hard to have patience. Well, you know what? It's actually really difficult for us as adults to have patience too. Did you know your mom and dad sometimes get impatient? Let me see if you can relate to this. California traffic. It's a traffic again? Or maybe you're recovering from an injury or treatment or a surgery. It's hard to wait to allow your body to heal. Or maybe you have something in your life that you're just waiting for God to send you an answer, and you have to patiently wait. We all go through stages in our life where we have to wait every single day. In fact, I think that's part of testing that God is testing us to see our patience and our dependence on him. Well, to test our patience today, I thought I would have some involvement from the junior choir. So Grace, can you come on up here? I have asked Grace, who's in the 6th grade, to be my volunteer. Now, Grace, I have a big jar of M&Ms for you. And it's very simple. Do you remember your colors? Just making sure. I know you learned that in kindergarten. I put the colors. We're going to do something very simple. All you have to do, see, all the colors are here. Simple. All you have to do is separate the M&Ms into the different jars. You think you can do that? Easy peasy, right? Couple rules, of course. We need to put some parameters around this. You can only use one hand. Which hand are you going to use? Your right hand? Okay, tuck your left hand behind you. And then one more rule. You have to use the utensil or the item, the tool that I give you. Okay? Are you game? You're ready? Okay. First thing. Here you go. Now just go ahead and separate those into the different jars. Encourage her. Encourage her. Go, Grace. Yes. Yes, you got one. Awesome. Look at her. She's on a roll. A really long roll. Keep going. You're doing great. Okay, we know you can do that. It's just a matter of time. So let me take that. I did change out the straws between surfaces. What about some chopsticks? You think you can do it then? Okay, some encouragement. Come on, Grace. Look at that. She already has like 3 of them. 4, 5. Okay, Grace, I think we're going to run out of time. We have to leave some time for Pastor Miguel, don't we? What about this? If I gave you this, would you be able to do it faster? Why don't you try that? Oh, no time at all. You could probably empty this whole jar, although I don't think we have time for you to do all of it. Thank you so much, Grace, for helping me. You can go back to your seat now. What a good sport. You know, having patience is something that we have to deal with every single day. And it's how we deal with that patience every day, which is going to bring the quality to our life. We can be angry and upset and yell. But if we choose to deal with patience with joy, that's where God can really work. You know, it doesn't help paint dry faster when you yell at the wall. Or it doesn't help if you cry madly because your plant won't grow. It's not going to make it happen. So how you deal with patience when you're going through it is something that God wants to teach us. In the Bible, in Psalms 37, it talks a lot about patience throughout the Bible. And I was looking at different versions, and one version said, take rest in God and wait patiently for him. Another version said, be still in the Lord and have patience, wait patiently on him. And every version that I looked at, the last part was always the same. Wait patiently on him. That never changes. So this week, when you deal with something that is so frustrating and you are impatient, I want you to stop, take a deep breath, and count to 5. And while you're counting to 5, I want you to think of all the ways that God has been patient with you, and you will be much more happier. Thank you so much for listening.
Today we continue our sermon series, Fruitful, but before we do that, please join me in reading our quotes for today. What can we gain by sailing to the moon if we are not able to cross the abyss that separates us from ourselves? The strongest of all warriors are these two, time and patience. A waiting person is a patient person. The word patience means the willingness to stay where we are and live the situation out to the full in the belief that something hidden there will manifest itself to us. Or despisest thou the riches of his goodness and forbearance and long-suffering, not knowing that the goodness of God leadeth thee to repentance? And now let's rejoin our worship service.
Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs.
Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres.
So something has changed in the 8 years that I've been part of this church. When I first got here, I thought that you as a congregation demanded perfection. And now I realize that what you yearn for more than anything else is authenticity and community. And I think we're getting there. I think we're getting there because during first service, a good friend of mine, she's the precocious and wonderful Maeve, came up to me and said, I know that the sermon today is about patience. Could you make it short? And I said, Maeve, I have a lot to say. And then she said, well, it's just that Pastor Randy preaches so long. I don't know if we're going to be able to fulfill Maeve's request. After all, at the end of first service, she came up to me and she said, you lied to me. But we've become this family. And when I look at you from this vantage point, I wonder and realize how much of a vision you've become. How wonderful you look. How sharp Steve's tie and shirt combination is today. How my friend Scott always has the most interesting factoids about his clothes. We indeed are a family. And because we're a family, I feel it's necessary to share some things that are going on in my life. I have a dream. And the dream isn't a utopia. It's actually really easily achievable. My dream is to go on a cruise. Because the apex of American excess is to sit and eat copious amounts of food and to lounge in front of a pool as the ocean passes by and to wake up at a deliciously late hour. So my dream is to go on a cruise. The problem is that Linda is terrified of cruises. And the reason why she's terrified of cruises is because she has watched a bunch of murder mystery documentaries. And those murder mystery documentaries always happen on board a ship. And so, as you might guess, there's quite a bit of convincing that I need to do. And I attempted to convince her by just looking straight into her and in my sweetest voice, reminding her how committed I am to our family. How much I love the fact that we have 2 wonderful boys. I also felt it necessary to remind her that I had no intention of murdering her. I think Loma University Church, the lowest base that we can hold our pastors at is no murder. For some reason, though, that didn't convince her, and so I then had to remind her that as I'm getting close to 40, I have no intention of entering that Darwinian experience, otherwise known as the dating scene. And that seemed to do the trick, because she booked 2 cruise tickets to the Mexican Riviera. It's very exciting. I mean, I know you're not excited because you're not going, but it's very exciting. Probably the most exciting part is that my kids aren't coming with me. And I felt a bit guilty, but not guilty enough to take them with me. Just guilty enough to invite them out to dinner. And so my 2 boys were eating with me at a restaurant, and I was telling them about all the expectations and the rules and the regulations that they are to follow while they're at Grandma's house. And then my back started to hurt a bit. I thought it was just excitement. So I brushed it off, we climbed onto my car, and we started driving. My back got increasingly more and more tender. And in my mind, I'm just thinking, I just got to make it to tomorrow. I just got to get on that boat, and as I watch the beautiful Pacific just sail on by, everything's going to be fine. So we pull up to my driveway. My kids jump out of the car, they run in order to start packing their bags, and the moment that my foot touches the cement, my back seizes. Now, if you've ever had back issues, you know that when you have a back spasm like this, the way to deal with it is to summon up a perfect mixture of composure, courage, and patience. I didn't have any of those qualities that day, and so as I fell forward onto my driveway, I started yelling out in agony. My neighbor, who's a wonderful dietitian, ran over, and she looks at me, and she says, "Is everything okay?" Here's the weird part, though. As she's asking me this, it's like this remnant of toxic masculinity that I thought I had exercised. This machismo that I don't recognize begins to bubble up inside me. And so I look at her and I say, "Yeah, I'm fine. I'm just stretching." Because that's normal. God bless her. She says, "Is there anything I can do for you?" And I tell her, "Well, can you hand my phone over to me?" And so she does, and I dial Linda's number. Now, I don't want to worry her. I think that the image of her husband mangled up on the driveway is too much for her to bear. Plus, let's face it, I don't want my cruise getting canceled. And so in the calmest voice that I can muster, I say, "Honey, how long until you get home?" Lynn says, "I'll be home in about 20 minutes. I say, "Oh, okay, well, I've got a surprise for you when you get here." And then I hang up. My neighbor asks me if everything's going to be okay. I tell her, "Yeah, I'm just going to hang out here until Linda comes." And then, and please don't quote me on this, and I know that the theology is a little iffy, then God says, "Miguel, I'm going to teach you a lesson. I'm going to teach you a lesson in the school of affliction. I'm going to give you a crash course in patience," because my whole body begins to seize. And at that moment, we have to call the ambulance. And so I get in, or rather I'm thrown into this ambulance, taken to the emergency room, pumped full of wonderful medications. And then I receive this instruction from the ER doc. She tells me, follow up with your primary. So fast forward a couple weeks. I know that hospitals have these really draconian confidentiality rules, so I'm not going to tell you where I was. I just pulled into this facility in Redlands. And as I walk into the lobby at Kaiser, I realize that a bunch of you healthcare providers have left Loma Linda to go work for Kaiser. I mean, that has nothing to do with the message for today. I just want you to know that your pastors are always watching you. And we will talk about that later. Now, I know that it's happened to you. I know that at some point in your life, you've entered into a moment of crisis, and you've made all these promises, these pleas. You've said, I will change the way I live my life. And the moment the crisis passes, we go back to our old life, don't we? And so here I am in the hospital, waiting for my primary care physician, impatient and restless. And as I'm thumbing through a magazine, it dawns on me that this space of restlessness that has become all too common for me occurs when our expectations don't match up with our reality. And you don't need to have a cruise canceled in order to realize that something happens within us when our expectations fall short of our reality. And you jump into the space of restlessness. This common occurrence that is part and parcel of our time. Think about your own life. Picture yourself in that empty office space dotted with cubicles, or in that harried and hurried, made up home office, and the temptation to get distracted is just a click away, and you're not really being productive, but you're busy. You're also not being lazy. You're feeling restless because your expectations haven't met up with your reality, and now you are pointlessly at work. And so I'm thinking about this as the doctors, which like to torture us, move me from one waiting room to a smaller waiting room. And as I'm looking at the magazines that she has there, one article catches my eye. It's a report put out by the Mayo Clinic that indicates that 40% of physicians in America struggle with burnout and depersonalization. Why you would put that magazine and that article in a doctor's office, I do not know. But I didn't know what depersonalization meant, so I Googled it really quick, and I realized that depersonalization is the experience of not viewing those you care for as human. And so in my mind now, not only am I restless and impatient, I'm also anxious because I just know that my primary care physician doesn't see me as a person whose dreams have been dashed. She sees me as a flesh and a slab of meat. So she walks in and starts asking me some questions. I don't respond. She continues trying to figure out what happened at the ER. I still don't respond. Because with every fiber in my being, I want to answer this questionnaire by simply saying, you do realize I am human, right? So she pauses for a moment, and she knows what I'm thinking, and she says, "Oh, I know what's going on. You seem a little jumpy." You read that Mayo Clinic report, didn't you? Don't worry, I know that if I cut you, you will bleed. She says, I know that, here's another article that I think you should read. And I'm figuring, oh, great. She's about to pull something that says 25% of physicians are now cannibals. But instead of that, she hands me an article, and the title of it is simply, 80% of millennials are restless and burnt out. And then it hits me. I'm not devastated because I didn't go on my cruise. I'm not restless because I have to finish writing a dissertation. I'm impatient because my reality hasn't met my expectations. That was a sober moment. And as you know, we are in the middle of a sermon series entitled Fruitful. And it's dealing with these ideas of the fruits of the Spirit. And I'm thinking about you, and I'm thinking about dreams dashed, and I'm thinking about doctors that are burnt out and millennials that are restless. And all the while, I'm still in this doctor's office. And my primary care physician says something incredibly profound. She looks at me and she says, "It's all out of balance." And I smirk and I say, "I know, the world is messed up." And she looks at me and she says, "No, I'm talking about your hips." And then it hits me. Patience. Fruitful. We're all out of balance. We're experiencing restlessness. And the question is, how do we counteract it? Today I want to invite you to consider two communities. Two communities out of balance, two churches that are restless, two congregations that are impatient. There's those Corinthians, and those Corinthians are dealing with all kinds of problems. There's debates on spiritual gifts. There's issues of sexual immorality. There's silos that have forced them now to start partaking of the Lord's Supper separately. And then there's the Galatians. That church in Galatia that is forcing circumcision upon people, that has corrupted the gospel and now believes that we are justified by obedience. And what is Paul's recipe? What is Paul's prescription for these churches to move out of a space of restlessness into an arena of rest? One word. Pastor Randy introduced us to that word a few weeks ago, and it is the first step if we are to remove restlessness and recover rest. It all starts with love. Now, I know that it might be a bit simplistic. I know that our language, and particularly that term, has been devaluated. I mean, after all, I was in my favorite coffee shop yesterday, and I looked at the barista and I said, "Oh, I love you. You're the best part of my morning." That's how devalued the idea of love has become. And that's not just a scourge of our time. But you see, Paul believes that the first step in recovering rest is love. Now, he uses this word, agape. And we talked about it a few weeks ago. What you perhaps don't know is that that word is a fully Christian word. It only appears 4 times outside of the New Testament. And Paul baptizes this word to remind his congregations, to remind a restless people, a community out of balance, that love, agape, is not an emotion. Agape is an orientation of the will. It's a mindset. I can't tell you what love is. I can tell you what love does, though. And so in both Galatians chapter 5 and in 1 Corinthians 13, Paul begins to develop this concept of love. Now, talking about the text that we've been living in for the past few weeks, the great and eminent theologian, John Stott, says that the fruits of the Spirit can be divided into 3 primary groups. The first 2, love and joy, have to do with our relationship with God. And the next triad, peace, patience, kindness, have to do with our relationship with each other. And the last 2, gentleness and self-control, well, they have to do with our relationship with ourselves. I love that idea. And I very much appreciate Stott's division, but I think he's missed a nuance. Love isn't part of the fruit of the Spirit. Love is a descriptor of how a community that is moved out of restlessness and into rest acts. Another word that is lost, its meaning is patience. I know what you think when you think about patience. The image comes to mind, flooding your senses. You're in Southern California and you're stuck in our terrible traffic. You're stuck behind a person that doesn't realize that here in Southern California, speed limits are more like suggestions. And with every fiber of your being, you want to honk that horn until you see the license plate frame. And you realize that it reads, "The Sabbath is still the 7th day." And you say, "Oh, no." By the way, there's a Greek word for waiting behind a slow driver in traffic. Hupomone. But in Galatians chapter 5, when thinking about the fruit of the Spirit, and in 1 Corinthians 13, when describing what love is, Paul doesn't use that word. Because that's an emotion. Paul uses a word that is more closely connected to this idea of an orientation of the will. He chooses a compound word made up of 2 Greek words, makro and themea. Makro means long, themea means passion. And so when thinking about that famous passage in Corinthians, or our Fruit of the Spirit series for this particular time in our church's life, that's what Paul is talking about. He's talking about the idea of being long-passioned. Well, what does patience mean in this context? F.F. Bruce, the eminent Bible scholar, describes it probably best when thinking about these things. He says, if in English we had an adjective long-tempered as a counterpart to short-tempered, then macrothemia, the word that Paul uses, could be called the quality of being long-tempered. So how does Paul move his congregation from restlessness into rest? He says it starts with love. And then he channels Jesus. As Christ gives the constitution of the kingdom, do you remember the words? If someone forces you to go a mile with them, go 2 miles instead. Paul realized that if you are able to master and muster this capacity for long-temperedness, you will be truly free. Freedom. Another word. Another word that becomes central to Paul's excursus to the church in Galatia. It's a passionate plea throughout the whole letter. Paul is pushing back ravenously against those that would corrupt the gospel and sell you a bill of goods that say you are justified by obedience. He builds his argument in a crescendo until we get to Galatians chapter 5, verse 1, which reads, "It is for freedom's sake that Christ has set you free." So you start with love. And your commitment to love gives you freedom. Jacques Ellul, the French philosopher and theologian, defines freedom, the freedom that a long-tempered Christian is called to experience, in the following way. Ellul writes, "The glorious liberty of the children of God is not the happy fluttering of a butterfly. From one attractive flower to another, it is a joyous but also radical, hard, and absolute giving us our burden. God launches us into an unsuspected adventure, a conflict, which is that of freedom." Ellul is saying that restoration to rest is an orientation of the will. That the antidote to restlessness requires intentional thought. That patience is more than simply waiting behind a line of cars on the freeway or a checkout counter at the grocery store. Because long-temperedness has to do with the way in which you react to those that consistently harm you. So you start with love. Love gives you freedom. And freedom introduces you to another word. Patience. But the patience that Paul is talking about in 1 Corinthians 13 and Galatians 5 is a paradox. Patience is a paradox. And I know that you're scratching your head and saying, well, what does that mean? Well, as Christians, we talk a lot about paradoxes, don't we? We say the first shall be last. He who holds on to his life will lose it. What does this paradox have to do with the idea of freedom? With this idea of love in an orientation of the will, well, Paul is telling these communities that are restless and impatient that the only way to be truly free is to serve. And you might be thinking, well, that works. I mean, intellectually it makes sense, and I can work on my long-temperedness. The only problem is that the world is full of people. And people sometimes can be annoying. Now, here at Loma Linda University Church, we talk about the idea of growing disciples. And you might be saying, I get the concept of love. I get the concept of freedom. I understand what it means to live in a paradox. But how am I going to minister to my coworker that continues to push my buttons? How am I going to relate to that family member that knows the right words, the right pressure points to apply, and makes me lose my temper? Well, that's nothing new. Here, the Corinthian church was dealing with people that were speaking in tongues and taking over the worship service, and the Galatians were dealing with this idea that they needed to check for your status as circumcised. Talk about awkward church services. So Paul is penning this letter and saying the way that you develop long-temperedness is you adjust your life to be lived in the same rhythm that Jesus lived his life in. And you might be asking, well, what is that rhythm? Well, Jesus ministered in the valley. And as disciples, we want you to go out and minister in the valley. But something really interesting happened throughout Jesus' earthly ministry. Yeah, after he was done healing and teaching and comforting and blessing, his hands were dirty and his feet were journey weary. When everybody else was celebrating and laughing and dreaming about what place they would have in the kingdom, Jesus went up into the mountain alone. You cannot minister in the valley if you don't go into the mountain alone. You cannot develop long-temperedness if you don't cultivate the capacity for solitude. Mary Oliver, who's a theologian and a poet, talks about the importance of solitude for the spiritual experience. She has a pithy poem entitled The Old Poets of China. And this is what the poem says. Oliver writes, "Wherever I am, the world comes after me. It offers me its busyness. It doesn't believe I don't want it. Now I understand. Now I understand why the old poets of China went so far and high into the mountains and then crept into the midst." So it starts with love. Love gives you freedom. Freedom allows you the capacity to get comfortable with the paradox. And that comfort allows you to live out a life where you recognize that the best way to serve in the valley is by going up into the mountain. But up to this point, it's all intellectual, isn't it? So what does long-temperedness look like in Southern California? What does patience look like in Southern California, in Loma Linda, in 2022? Well, my prayer is that if you spend enough time with God on the mountain, God will give you the maturity to relinquish your right to be right. If you truly, truly want to develop long-temperedness, you need to be able to relinquish your right to be right. The problem with these unbalanced communities in Galatia and in Corinth was that they were boasting about the works that made them different. Here's the truth. The flesh is going to tear us asunder. The Spirit is the only thing that can bind us together. Still too intellectual for you, family? Well, let me touch a tinge at the strings in your heart that make you uncomfortable. Relinquishing your right to be right means that when you leave this place and you go to the gas station and you look at the prices on the nozzle and you feel this surge of anger building up inside you, you resist the temptation to take a picture and upload it to social media and say, it's all those Biden voters' fault. Relinquishing your right to be right is when you open your newspaper tomorrow and you read about the crisis in the world and the homelessness and the poverty and the hunger and the immigration crisis, that you resist your temptation to say, oh, those non-Biden voters, they don't care about anyone but themselves. I'm still not hitting close to home. Relinquishing your right to be right means that as you sit in this sanctuary and you look around and you see people with masks and people without masks, you cease to make assumptions about them. The flesh will tear us apart. The Spirit will bind us together. That's what it means to be patient. That's what long-temperedness looks like. There's a story I like about the old desert fathers. It's a monk, and he's feeling quite a bit of distress because every time somebody insults him, he loses his temper. So he goes to his mentor and he says, I've got this problem, you've got to help me. The mentor hears compassionately and says, I have a solution for you. Every time somebody insults you, I want you to commit for the next 3 months to give them money. Wait, what? Yeah, for the next 3 months, every time somebody insults you, I need you to give them money. 3 months is a long time. You know what? Better yet, let's try 3 years. And the young monk, feeling out of options, agrees. And 3 years pass. And at the end of the 3 years, he is transferred to another monastery in another city. And when he walks into the gates of that city, he is greeted with a litany of insults. He lets the words wash over him. And then he begins to laugh. Well, the people that are gathered at the city gate can't resist the temptation to go and talk to him. And so they say, why are you laughing? And this young monk, this long-tempered follower of Christ, says, I can't help but laugh because you are giving me for free what I have paid for the past 3 years. You start with love. Love gives you freedom. Freedom allows you to be comfortable in the paradox. Your comfort in the paradox pushes you to seek God on the mountain. And those mountaintop experiences give you the maturity to relinquish your right to be right. And that is what it means to be patient. Because for freedom's sake, Christ has set you free. Pray with me. In the silence, in the solitude of our own hearts and experience, we would ask, O Lord, to examine us. Allow us to love better. Allow us to experience freedom, to find comfort in the paradox, to run towards solitude, to mature enough to relinquish our right to be right, so that we may speak your words, so that we may act in the way that you act, so that we might have Christ's mindset. We pray in your name. Amen. Dear friends, amidst a busy week, I want to give a gift to you. I would ask you that you stay seated as we enjoy a wonderful postlude. Take this time to move from restlessness into rest.
Hello, dear friends. It's another week, a beautiful day dawning where I am this morning as I record, and I'm so glad to get to bring greetings to all of you. First on my list today is Robert Parsons, Salem, Oregon. And 90 years ago, Robert was born to College of Medical Evangelist doctors in Angola, and he continued to live there and work with his parents until 1975 and the Civil War. Warmest congratulations to your continuing productive life, Robert. God bless you. Hello, David Buenhemia. So glad to know about your birthday right here, Loma Linda University Church. And there you are, and with your wife and your grandchildren. Congratulations, David. Barry Golden. 50 years old, Barry. Congratulations, man. And so glad to see you there with your sister. Hello, Ralph Arnold, Thousand Oaks, California. This picture was sent by my friend, Bill Stone, over in Kentucky, and it brings greetings to Ralph and his wife there in the picture, and Ruth Holland, who is also in that picture, and she's from Crossville, Tennessee. Thank you, Bill. Congratulations to you, Ralph and Ruth. And speaking of Stone, here is John Stone as a little guy, and then with his wife, Marta. He's Bill's son, and he lives in Caldwell, Idaho. And he took this selfie last Sabbath. Yes, Betsy and I are in it at the Pathfinder event at Gem State Academy. And Greg Connell is also in it. It's his birthday this week. And there he is, and with Becky and Edward and Sarah. Congratulations, guys, for your birthday. And John Stone's aunt is Ava Blackburn, and she lives in Port Deposit, Maryland. And I think this is her 81st birthday. Congratulations, Ava. So glad to be in touch with you and know about your birthday. Hi, Lolita Campbell. Dear, dear friend, right here, Loma Linda. And so glad to know about your birthday, Lolita. Wish you all the best. And there's dear Scott. Lonnie Daniel Ayaz, Berrien Springs, Michigan. Look at this young man. He is 16 years old, and there he is with Sister Sarah and Brother Caleb. Amy Prindle, I'm so glad to know about your birthday out Calamasa, California way, and I'm glad to greet you for your birthday because you are the daughter of proud parents Sharon and Marlon Dolinsky. David and Bronwyn Larson, congratulations, you two. Always glad to be reminded of you, and now your anniversary. Congratulations. Rita Beddoe, Kashmir, Washington, I think, and we go clear back to College Place, Walla Walla College, and now you're marking a birthday, and I wish you all the best, Rita. Hello, Sandy Wyman, right here, Loma Linda these days now. So glad to know about your birthday. And there you are with your canine child. Congratulations, Sandy. And Pat Dickinson, a part of the Villa family. Always glad to be in touch with the Villa family. Warmest best to you on your birthday, Pat. And that goes for you too, Darlene McMillan, a part of the Villa family. God bless you. Happy birthday. Ella Milosavljevic. And Ella is the mother of our pastor, Philip. And there she is, Grandma Ella, with Philip's little girl, and there she is with Grandpa Roddy and Philip's little boy as well. Congratulations on your happy family. And I know those are only 2 of your 6 grandchildren. Hello, Aletha Natiuk, Battleground, Washington. Congratulations on your birthday, Aletha, and so glad to be reminded of you with dear David there. Dennis Anderson, trumpet par excellence, part of the Sanctuary Brass. There is Dennis with Lee, and we're marking his birthday, but he is one of the trumpets in the quartet as we conclude greetings every week. Hello, Monica Hartnell. Dear, dear friend, so glad to know about your birthday, and I wish you all the best. There you are with dear Brian, and you too are kind of buried under grandchildren. I can't think of anything better for grandparents. Hello, dear Mary Sue. I am so disappointed I don't get to see you every Sabbath as I used to. Mary Sue used to be one of the first at University Church. Happy birthday, Mary, and glad to see you there with dear sister Elsie, whom I got to see just about 2 weeks ago now. Hello, Dee Dee and Walt Nelson, out Beaumont, California way now, and I think we're celebrating your 52nd anniversary. Warmest congratulations to you two. Hello, Roseanne Stacy. Yes, you're a part of the Loma Linda family, but you're down under at home in Australia these days, and I extend warmest greetings to you for your birthday. And Karen Johnson Fasano. Hello, Karen, up Seattle, Washington way. So many people are glad when I remind them of Karen and your birthday. Congratulations. Glad to be in touch, Karen. Elfrey Quizon, right here, Loma Linda. Hello, Elfrey, for your birthday. And I couldn't resist this picture of you and your late dear, dear dad. He was such a neat man. I enjoyed visiting him several times. And a big hello to Pete McLeod, right here in Redlands. Pete is a good friend to me, to lots of us. And as I remember your birthday, Pete, it reminds me of early Lifestyle magazine days. Congratulations, Pete. And Philip Sherwood with dear, dear Raquel. Philip is a part of the church media program here, and he is also one of the editors for these greetings. And there they are with their darling daughter. Umberto Rossi, good friend for a long time, a part of the University Church, and I congratulate you for your birthday, Umberto. And Joy Schenkel, that goes for you too. Miss seeing you as I used to be able to do, but warmest congratulations to you, Joy, for your birthday. And Pastor Myron Vegley, Burleson, Texas way. We've known each other for a long, long time, and I'm so glad to know it's your birthday again, Myron. Wish you all the best. And here is Don Reason, Orlando, Florida, 95th birthday, I'm told. And there you are with the ones you call your West Coast trio, and then a part of your larger special family group. Hello to Kathy Sharman Hempel, Fresno, California. We go back to Walla Walla College days, don't we, Kathy? And I wish you all the best. Your 92nd birthday, lady? Congratulations. And dear friend, Ed Turner, West Palm Beach, Florida. Congratulations, man, on your 81st birthday. Great memories. And finally, Mary L. Graham, Stockton, California, 93rd birthday. She is the mother of proud son, Ricardo Graham. Wow, what a beautiful lady. Congratulations. Well, yes, congratulations to everyone. I'm glad to be with you here this week, and I look forward to next week as well.